And so here I am working a day job. I'm speaking anywhere and everywhere I can. And I'm marketing myself every waking moment. You know, living at home with mom and dad, digging out of that debt. And so the one thing I wasn't doing was perfecting my craft, improving my stories. I didn't have time, but I didn't make the time, and I didn't know I needed to make the time.
Hello, Patricia Calixte here. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to my channel, Toastmasters Journey, where I love to share helpful content, my messages, and I also love to share others' stories, which is why I've invited a lot of motivational speakers, TEDx, world champion speakers of public speaking, and Toastmasters members to my channel at the Break Time with Patty show. And particularly, this is a special Break Time with Patty show condensed version. So I was recently talking to my good friend Tate, and he made a really good suggestion. So let me try to imitate him. Patty, I was thinking, have you ever thought of extracting the best tips from different champion speakers? You could call it something like 8 tips of 8 best speakers, you know, and then you could share that with your viewers. I'm sure they would find it really helpful. To which I responded, Daryl, you're a genius. I don't know, I never thought of this. So here I am. I went back to 8 interviews that I held with 8 world champion speakers of public speaking, and I got the best bits. It was so hard to narrow it down to like a short segment, but I extracted the best bits from every one of their interviews with me, and I'm sharing them with you. Whether or not you're yourself competing in the World Championship of Public Speaking, if you have to give a speech soon or eulogy, if you have to sell your own products or services online or in public, at least how to deliver an impactful and memorable message. If that's the information that you need, you're at the right place. All right, so without delay, let's get started with Darren Lacroix, followed by 7 other world champion speakers. Enjoy! Or if it's not already done, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell so that you'll know when I'll be releasing my next content. I share content every week. You don't want to miss it. All right, see you soon. Bye.
And I thought that was it. But the reason that I competed, I had a comedy mentor. His name was Dave Fitzgerald. He was one of my best friends in the world. And he was noticing that I was trying to find my story to launch my career. You know, that signature story that we're known for. And I would bring him a story, and I bring him another story, bring another story. He said, Darren, stop. He said, stop trying to find the story that will launch your career, and instead take the stories you already have and make them so good someone will pay to hear them. And that was, I felt like a cartoon where they take the head and they go, it was a game changer for me. I never looked at it that way. I just thought your life presented you with a story. You add a little drama, edit it a little, and you're done. I didn't realize there's a time-proven structure to great stories. I mean, Hollywood movies follow a structure to the T. In the exact minutes, you could almost follow it. So I didn't realize that was the possibility. And my mentor, Dave, who taught me that, passed away in 2000. And so I heard about the speech contest, and now understand where I'm at. I'm working full-time job at Bose Corporation. I'm a telemarketer. That's my day job as I pursued my dream of comedy and speaking. And so here I am working a day job. I'm speaking anywhere and everywhere I can. And I'm marketing myself every waking moment, you know, living at home with mom and dad, digging out of that debt. And so the one thing I wasn't doing was perfecting my craft, improving my stories. I didn't have time, but I didn't make the time, and I didn't know I needed to make the time. So when the speech contest came around in 2001, I competed once before in the humorous contest, I think in 1998. But that was just the humorous contest. different reason, different scenario. But in this contest, I joined the contest because I said, you know what? Let me look at my keynote. So my goal was not to win a contest. I had a keynote speech, and let's just say the value level is like a 5 out of 10. So my whole goal was to pull out one of my best stories, bring it over here to the speech contest format, work on it, with my goal to then put it back in the keynote, raising the value of the whole keynote. World champion Craig Valentine says, if you want to master peace, you have to master the pieces. And so that's exactly what I was doing. So I won the first level, second level, third level, and I was excited to win because now I got to work on it even more. I got to go even deeper. And that's the first time in my life I got a coach. I was like, ooh, I might have something here. Let me get a coach. So I got somebody, I found someone that I trusted and was a skilled coach and worked with him. And then I found myself winning the fourth level, and they said, oh, you need to, but you got to write a new speech. So I looked at my keynote, I pulled out another story, and I worked on it with, again, my goal to now make both of those stories better, enhancing the value of the keynote, enhancing my value in the marketplace, and the impact that I'm going to make on my audience. And then I won in Connecticut, and they said, okay, you got to write a new speech. What? So now the challenge was I didn't have any stories that would fit in this contest format after those two. So I had other stories, but they weren't really stories. And so that's when I met Mark Brown, who became my coach, the 95 world champion. And so my second point was he forced me to go deeper in me. And so he asked me a question. He said, Darren, choose a child in your life. And I was like, okay, I don't have any children. So I looked at my eldest nephew, Michael, and he said, if you were going to die tomorrow, what one lesson that you learned from your life would you want to pass on to Michael to help him through his? And I started coming up with an answer. He's like, no. Write it down. Write down every lesson you've ever learned, and you got to narrow it down to one. And it was about 3/4 of the way down the third page that I wrote down, I became a comedian because I was willing to fail. So willing to fail became the essence of I have another speech in my head, essence of ouch. So that was the working title, was willing to fail. And we get this in the contest every year. All the world champions do. What's the winning formula? What's the winning formula? It's like, I don't know. I don't know your life. There's no winning formula. It's what's that lesson in your life that you feel so passionate about. You will work on the story until it's world class, and you get that every time in front of an audience, you have a privilege. Watch Rudy. Watch Rudy. And I say that jokingly, and I'm serious. Rudy came out in 1993. I started stand-up in 1992. The reason that movie resonated with me is I could resonate with that character. You know, Sean Austin, who plays Rudy Rudiger, like, yeah, he got beat up. He wasn't smart enough. He had dyslexia. I have dyslexia. Other world champions stuttered when and they overcame that, and they still went on to be the world champions. So surround yourself with inspiration. Like, you failed. Yes. There's nobody who's successful who hasn't failed. You're going to fail. All you have to do, like Rudy, is get up one more time than you failed. And so I love the story. And that's why that movie meant, because I would go back, and I'll tell you a quick story that I don't talk about much, but I love this story. So I got to meet the Rudy Rudiger. Did you hear me talk about this before?
No, I did not hear that one.
So it was when I moved here to Las Vegas. I've been here since 2013. 2007. Been here 13 years at the time of this recording. And so I put it on my bucket list. I wanted to meet Rudy. And so first thing I did, jumped online and Googled it. And it turns out he had an office 1 mile from my house. I was like, ah! I could hear the choirs of angels. I was like, okay, this is supposed to happen. And there's a lot of challenges, and I didn't hear back from the office. I called the office, I emailed the office, and I was like, I'm gonna Rudy. I'm gonna Rudy him. And anyway, so I got to meet him, and I was like a little kid having lunch with Santa Claus, and I'm like, it's Rudy. One day he came to my house and he told me this story. He said that his daughter had won a choir contest and had won a competition, and her fellow choir mates, I'm not sure the right term there, got the they won the opportunity to sing the national anthem at a Lakers game. So he, living in Las Vegas, he drove out there with his daughter, and they got to the Staples Center where the Lakers played, and they were there 2 hours early. And the only person in the building was Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant was shooting baskets by himself, no one around. So Rudy turned to his daughter. He said, do you want to meet Rudy? Excuse me, do you want to meet Kobe? And she's like, yeah. So they start going down. Of course, security stops them. You know, they didn't see the security, but they didn't want anybody to get near him. And so Rudy yells down, hey, Kobe, it's Rudy. And Kobe stops and says, Rudiger? And he goes, yeah. And Kobe goes up to Rudy and tells Rudy that when he was playing semi-pro basketball in Europe, he would go home every day and watch the movie Rudy. And he said, if a guy with no talent works that hard and can achieve what you did, how important and what could happen to a guy with talent if he worked that hard? He looked Rudy dead in the eye and he said, I'm here 2 hours early because of you. Oh. Exactly. A guy who played in college for 28 seconds literally inspired one of the greatest basketball players ever. And that's why Toastmasters matters. Everyone has a story, and the world needs to hear it. Who would have thought Kobe Bryant was inspired by Rudy's story and Rudy's struggle? So if you're failing again and again and again, congratulations, you got a story. Just get up. And remember, your kids are watching. Your kids will hear what you say, but they watch what you do. And what you do is generational. What you do is generational. You're not just inspiring your kids if you keep going, but they're going to learn from that, and they're going to inspire your grandkids.
Wow.
I had placed second in 2016, and then I competed again in 2017, but I couldn't get out of the semifinals. In 2018, I competed again, but this time I placed second in my district, which meant that I couldn't advance to the semifinals. So it seemed to me that even though I felt I was getting better as a speaker, the results were regressing. Yes. I wasn't moving ahead. And I knew that in 2019, they were going to introduce this video quarterfinal. And I knew that it was going to be tougher to get to the World Championship of Public Speaking. Part of me was thinking that, you know what? I don't think I'm ever going to win the World Championship of Public Speaking. So I have to try to find a way to just enjoy the ride. So I decided to focus more so on growth as a speaker. Every single round that I competed in, I wanted to get better. Whether it was just remembering my speech, whether it was making sure that my body language tied into exactly with what I was saying on stage, and then just improving the speech overall and improving the stories within that speech. I just wanted to get better every single round. And the interesting thing was that when I started focusing on the growth instead of having this goal of winning the World Championship of Public Speaking, because I had made a goal to win the World Championship of Public Speaking every single year. And the only thing that would change is the year that I said I was going to do it. I said in 2012, I'm going to win the World Championship of Public Speaking in 2011. And then the next year, I'm going to win the I keep switching years, but you know what I mean. 2013, I'm going to win the 2013 World Championship of Public Speaking. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Mm-hmm. And then 19, I said, you know what? It's not a goal. It's a dream. And I am not in control of that dream. There are multiple people who would have to vote yes for me to be a world champion of public speaking. It's not in my control. I'm not going to worry about it. Therefore, I'm not going to put it on my list of goals this year. And instead, I'm going to focus on what I can do. I'm going to focus on putting in the work. I'm going to focus on growing as a speaker. These are the things that I can control. And the funny thing is that when I decided that I wasn't going to make it a goal to win the World Championship of Public Speaking, that was the year that I became the world champion of public speaking. Yes, that's really something that, again, has to be in the hands of somebody else. Mm. It's not going to be in your hands. You're not going to be the decision maker of if you become a champion or not. So you just have to control what you can, control the input goals. Mm. So the input goal is to compete. The input goal is to practice. The input goal is to practice your speech at X amount of clubs. An input goal could be to record yourself and listen to the recording. All of that input and all of that work is what goes into making you a better speaker. And then as a result of becoming a better speaker, you improve your chances of advancing in the contest. So that would be my advice for anybody who wants to compete. Well, first, compete, because I believe that the International Speech Contest is a great extension of the Toastmasters international curriculum. And it really helps you advance your skills exponentially, because if you are a person who, I'm a little bit competitive, I'm not the most competitive person in the world, but I have enough competitive drive where it forces me to think, how can I improve this speech or improve my speaking skills so that I can get to the next round? And then it also allows you to have repetition with your content. So you can improve your content over time, round after round after round. In theory, your speech should get better for every single round. The speech that you give in the club should not be as good as the speech that you give in the area. The speech at division should not be as good as the speech that you gave in the area. Or sorry, the speech at division should be better than the one at area, and so on and so on and so on. So it really puts you in a mindset of how can I improve? And when you have that mindset, that's where you're in a golden spot.
Most of my speeches write themselves. You know, if you pay attention, the speech or the lesson or the message will write itself. For example, my championship speech, one of those days, pretty much from start to finish, that's exactly how it happened. I mean, almost verbatim, if you will. And again, most of these speeches they write themselves. I like messages which are life lessons. I like lessons which are universal. So, for example, like the speeches that you mentioned, you don't have to be an American to relate to the topic or the subject that I talk about. It's universal. You can be from any country, you can be from any background, male, female, it doesn't matter. So I'm always looking for that universal message which has wisdom that improves the condition of the listener. That's what I'm going for. That's what I'm shooting for. I think you asked me previously, what's part of my style? And part of my style is I want to grab and keep the audience's attention. So if you look at those YouTube videos, you'll notice something. And there's a strategy behind what I do. A guy by the name of Bob Pike, he talks about the 3 elements of an opening. They are to break preoccupation, frame the message, and jump into the content. Break preoccupation means grab and keep the audience's attention. No preamble, no pre-ramble. No, hey, I'm happy to be here, none of that stuff. If you notice, almost all my speeches, the action starts right away, okay? Especially the bully speech. Now, the bully speech, be warned, there is, within the first 2 seconds, 1 second, there is some graphic language. And I've given that speech, and I've actually literally had people walk out because they were offended by it. Now, unfortunately, they walked out before they actually heard the whole message. But, you know, be warned, there's some graphic message there. And again, I have a purpose. I have an intention. One of my mentors, his name is Mark Sanborn. He's in the Speaking Hall of Fame. He says, Ed, our job as speakers is not to be liked. Our job as speakers is to provoke, is to change behaviors, to get the people to think. You know, Martin Luther King, who's one of my mentors and who's one of my favorite speakers, and his I Have a Dream speech has been recognized and acknowledged as one of the greatest speeches of all time. You'll notice a couple things. Number one, there was no evaluator after he spoke. You know, ladies and gentlemen, what did you think about that? You know, no one passed out a survey. Well, was that an 8 or was it a 9? You know, and then what could he have done to make this a 9? There was none of that. You know, in fact, there were many people who threatened his life, etc. And he was trying to change a generation. And some would say he changed generations, if you will. So if, you know, my goal as a speaker, I would like to be liked. And I think everyone wants to be liked. But my goal, primarily, I'm very, very clear, is I want to make impact. So that my bully speech, if it offends people, that's not my purpose. That's not my intention. But I understand if you are offended by it. But at the same time, I'm not going to change a word about it. I'm not going to change a thing, because I've had so many people reach out to me about that speech. And I think I've helped a lot of people, not only with that speech, but also all my speeches. I think I've had people just reach out to me and tell me how much my messages have helped them. So with regard to that, that's my goal, is to help people. That's the primary driver, if you will.
So in this speaking world, we have this saying, don't speak about it until you can laugh about it. When I tell you this sentence, what comes to mind for you, Ed?
Well, I just recently wrote a blog post about that. So this past August, again, I don't know if we mentioned this. I have children. I have a 2-year-old and I have a 35-year-old. Okay, so you can go with the jokes, if you will. I've heard them all. There's no joke I haven't heard, you know. At my church, my nickname is Abraham. So, but anyway, my son, he's an officer for New York Life Insurance out of Manhattan, New York. He had been invited to a bachelor party, and he attends this bachelor party. One of the participants who attend the bachelor party was binge drinking, and he literally passed out. So my son helps him up, you know, and says, hey, let's get some food, let's get you some water, etc. The guy gets a little aggressive with him, and my son says, hey, I'm just trying to help you. And, you know, the guy says, oh, okay. You know, he kind of settles down. And then my son says, well, you know, it's time for me to go, you know. So as he's leaving, this person that he tried to help literally pushes him from behind. I mean, literally tackles him into a wall. They're at a nightclub. At this nightclub, there is a brick wall, and there is a metal window seal. And the corner of the window seal punctures my son's ribs, his lung, his spleen. He has internal bleeding. He's critically injured. And as a parent, nothing prepares you for that call. Nothing prepares you for that call whatsoever, especially during COVID. So there's, you know, in New York, there's record COVID cases, etc. And so it was very, very hard. He's doing well today. He's fully recovered. There's a lot of positives came out of it. Fast forward to a follow-up. I happened to be with my son when he had a follow-up meeting with the surgeon. And the first thing out of the surgeon's mouth is, boy, he says, like, I've never seen anything like your case ever. And he says, had you waited like another 3 or 4 hours, you could have died. Now, my son knew this. He didn't want to tell me this. You know, he wanted to protect me. But that's how serious it was. So getting back to your original question, you know, don't talk about it until you can laugh about it. That's an aphorism in speaking. So I'm not prepared. You know, this is the first time I've talked about this story in public. I'm not prepared to give this story in a speech because I'm still emotionally connected to it. And I think it'll probably take a couple of years, to be perfectly frank. However, I will say to the thing I'm always processing on is is this a story that can help someone else? And once I'm in that place where I feel that this story can help someone else, then I will tell that story. And the thing I don't want to do is I don't want to do therapy on the audience. I've seen other speakers who had some type of trauma and they're doing therapy on the audience. They were not prepared to tell that. They're not healed from it. And I never, ever want to do that. So that's what I mean by, don't talk about it until you can laugh about it.
So I competed for the first time in 2012, not knowing really how it worked, thinking it was just a club contest. And my sister, the nervous speaker, beat me. She beat me. So I was very unimpressed. And then she won area, then she won division. I was actually sitting at the back hoping she would lose. It was not a great moment. I eventually went and confessed and she forgave me and I started mentoring her. She then won district. And she went on to come second in the semifinals in 2012 to Ryan Avery, who became the world champion 2 days later. So it was quite extraordinary. So having watched her journey, I realized how much work really went into a contest. And I entered the humorous contest later that year and went on to come second in our district. So really loved the process. And she was my mentor for that. But then I just didn't enter again because it was too much work and too much time and too much commitment. 2015, I entered because I had a speech that I believed in and I got as far as division. And then I never entered again. In fact, I left Toastmasters to become a mother. And if lockdown hadn't happened, I would still just be looking after my little boy. But because of lockdown, I rejoined to help resuscitate a club, my club, Toasted. They were down to 4 or 5 members. And I said, no, come, we've got to save this. And through that, we decided to have a club contest, but I also had a speech. And you have to have the right mindset and the right speech to do well in a contest. And November the year before, November 2020, I wrote a speech about my mum. And I went, this is a contest speech. And then I will honestly tell you, a voice somewhere said, and you're going to win the World Championship of Public Speaking. And I went, what? And I just thought, well, I don't know where that came from, but if that's even a possibility, I'm giving it everything. And so I entered last year feeling like I was meant to be the world champion. And I promise you, at no point did I want to tell anyone because I didn't want to jinx it. And, but I was like, I don't know why I have this feeling. And so I gave it everything because I knew I'd probably never have the energy again. There's a few things. I think, in terms of if you're trying to actually win this contest, ask yourself why. And I got this from Mohammed Qahtani. We were on a panel recently, 2014 world champion. He just said, ask yourself why. Is it for the fame? Is it for the fortune? Or is it because you've got a message for the world? And because the bottom line is if you win this contest, everyone needs something from you. And I didn't know that. I didn't know how busy it was going to make me in Toastmasters, that I would have to give up my weekends and my evenings. But it helps that I was doing it because I had a message that I wanted to give to the world. So really be clear on that, because the ego part doesn't last very long, but the purpose part lasts much longer. But if you are entering and going, how do I make the most of it? The first is you have to have the right mindset. And for me, the right mindset is not about winning. It's going, I'm entering this contest to grow. And if you enter it with the intention to grow, it doesn't matter if you only go as far as your club level. It means you will have worked on that speech far harder than you've worked on any speech. So bring that intention. I'm here to grow. I'm here to get feedback. I'm here to improve. I'm here to stretch myself. And then the second element is your speech. Now, I'm going to say something strange, but trust me, I believe that you could win the World Championship of Public Speaking giving a speech on how you learned to boil an egg. Yeah. Just think about that. It doesn't have to be a life-changing moment. It could be something that was as simple as your father or mother teaching you to boil an egg and the things that went wrong and the lesson you learned and the message it gave you. That could make you a world champion. So we don't need to be looking for profound, deep things always. Sometimes the most powerful messages lie in simple little moments. So trust that and have fun crafting those stories. But most importantly, work on your message statement. I worked on my final speech for 100 days. I went through 4 or 5 different message statements. They were all powerful. but they didn't speak to everyone in the audience. The beginning, it was get happy. The men were like, what? Take your fluffy speech and get out of here. And through working with that feedback and having the mindset, I'm here to grow, I'm here to improve, how can I change? I worked on that message statement, and 10 days before the finals, through feedback I got from a fellow Toastmaster, I suddenly walked away and went, what if I said my messages write a different story? And when I found that message statement, my whole speech changed, it came to life. So really spend time working on your message, but approach the contest with the intention to grow. The winning is a bonus, but the growth you will keep for life.
Now, mind you, I had no idea what I was doing. I had not written a speech. I had 3 bullet points on a 3x5 card. So it was no flow. It was just very extemporaneous. To my surprise, I won my club contest, and I didn't have any idea what that meant. I said, good, I won the contest. That was fun. I was told, no, you got to do another contest next. What next? I said, area. What's area? Area is above division. So when is that going to take place? Tonight. I said, what? Yes. So I competed in the area, and next thing I know, I'm going on to division. And then from division, I go to district. And I went to district, still did not have a scripted speech, but I gave my speech at district. And the difference was I didn't have 15, 20 people. There was over 200. And they laughed at my bad jokes, so much so I found out, I saw the red light, and I said, oh, okay, I'll end my speech, and I'll end my speech. And one guy was waving at me in the back, said, Mark. And I closed my speech out, and he told me how it was overtime. I didn't really think about it. I had no designs on a contest trophy. I was going along for a ride, Patty. I was named the winner of the District 46 district contest in 94, and I found out I had spoken for 7 minutes and 29 seconds. For non-Toastmasters, what that means is you are allowed as much as 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Anything more, you're disqualified. Had I had one big yawn or one deep breath or a sneeze, I probably would have been disqualified. But that led me to my, what was called a regional back then, it's called semifinals now, in Canada, in St. John, New Brunswick. I had to change my speech for that one, which I did. I kind of scripted it a little bit, and I won that contest. And lo and behold, without knowing what I was doing, I was in the 1994 World Championship in Louisville, Kentucky, in August of 94. Finally, I said, okay, I got to write a script. And I got some help from people who had, in our club in New York and in New York City, and they encouraged me. And I wrote a script that was pretty good, I thought. And I went to the finals with my wife. Angelina and Joel were small. David was in her womb. She was August. He was born October. So she was 7 months pregnant when we went to Louisville, Kentucky. And I gave the best I could, but it was not good enough to win. And I understood that. My son, not so much. Joel, he was 7, he was crying. And I was trying to console him. And the man literally walked into my life and transformed it. His name is David Brooks, the 1990 world champion. He told me he thought I was good and said, if you need help, here's my card, which I took. Following day, I got home, dropped my bags, and called David Brooks. Said, David Brooks, yes, Mark Brown here. Do you know who I am? He said, Mark, I met you yesterday. I said, Dave, you promised to help, will you? And he said, yes. And that began an old school mentoring coaching process whereby he in Texas would coach me in New York by phone and fax. For the millennial audience, a fax machine is about this big. It resembles a small print. You know what? Just Google it, ask Siri or ask Google. But he was my mentor by phone and fax. And with his help, in 95, I kind of went through my club area division myself. I pinged him for district, worked on that speech together. I won my district. Went to my region, semifinal, and I won that as well and qualified for the finals one more time. Now, back in those days, in the 90s, you had to have 3 speeches. Now you only need 2. We had to have 3. 1 through district, change it for semifinals, change it again for the finals. The idea being everyone has at least 1 good speech in them. To be a world champion back then, you had to prove it not once, not twice, but 3 different times. Wow. And I spent 6 weeks on a speech I knew was going to win for me, but it didn't feel right. In all my rehearsals, all my tests with all my audiences, it fell flat, and it was not good enough. And I recall writing David a letter and faxing it to him saying, it's not my best work. I said, you, my audience, my family, and my God deserve my best, and this is not it. Now, contest day is August 18, 1995. August 1st, I changed lanes and go back to an old speech I had given in the year before at my semifinal and reworked it and delivered that speech called A Second Chance in the finals of 95. Here's an interesting thing. That final speech that I gave was only seen by my family, by my coach, David Brooks, and by my staging coaches, Robert and Randy Gedalia from New York City, who were both National Speakers Association bigwigs in New York City. Wonderful couple. They've now since passed on. And they saw it. David saw it, and my family saw it. Nobody else in the audience saw that speech on that day. And I delivered it. I had fun with it. And the audience responded wonderfully well. The judges agreed, and I became the world champion. Here's one. I have several mark-isms that I adhere to. One is, one man's mundane is another man's magnificent. Now, I say the word man, not for male, but for human being. And also the word man and mundane and magnificent has the M alliteration. So please don't be upset if I don't seem inclusive. It was not meant to be, to be insensitive. It just rings well. One man's mundane is another man's magnificent. What I mean is our lives we're so close to our own lives, we fail to see the impact our story may have on somebody else. Case in point, I know that 40 years ago, I left Jamaica with, was it 42 years ago, with $40 in my pocket and 2 suitcases to go to America. That was my life. Yeah. But to most people, they say, what? You were 18 with $40, new life, new country? That's amazing. How did you do that? But because I'm so close to it, I don't realize the impact on other people. Mm-hmm. So impact comes when we genuinely tell our stories, especially if we understand that our stories have a universal appeal and impact. The stories that I tell have been effective on 5 continents because they aren't Jamaican stories or New York stories. They're human stories. And when you and I can have an emotional connection to the audience, you said you were kind of getting sweaty eyeballs because you felt a connection. You talked about how, yes, I understand with family coming to live with you. I understand the concept of family loving each other. That's it. When we share our stories and have an emotional connection, a universal message, we can have impact, especially when our intent and our purpose is not to show off or to brag or say how good we are, but to truly provide value to those who hear what we have to say. So to my fellow Toastmasters, I say, yes, you will give speeches and presentations, but don't forget, even a contestant, look at a judge's guide and ballot. In a judge's guide, they want to make sure there is some value and meaning for the audience. So we will have impact if our intention is not just so much to tell them how good we are or what we've done, me, I, but in some way, use our stories to inspire, encourage, impact, and touch our audience as well. And you mentioned one of the stories I talked about, my daughter, my eldest, my firstborn, Andreen, and how telling her story impacted you. We never know when something that we say has particular personal meaning to somebody else.
Put together, like a lot of speakers who go into the contest do, I put together 2 speeches at the beginning of contest season. I had 2 speeches just in case one would take me to the semifinals. And I'd been to the semifinals a couple of times before. So I had 2 speeches. If one took me to the semifinals, then I had a second speech that was honed that I might be able to use in the finals, or if I needed to switch speeches at any point. And they were designed to be in person. And the final speech, if I made it to the finals, was designed to be on that big stage in front of a ballroom of 3,000, but that big ballroom stage that stretches, if this is the ballroom, it stretches from here all the way across, clear across the front of that ballroom. And I decided I wanted to use the entire space, try to use it in unique ways. So it started in person. And I gave the speech that is named after the shirt you're wearing. Yes. It was blue. a speech that was that was the speech that made me want to enter the contest again, because it was a message dear to my heart, and I wanted that speech to be the best it could be. And it was, some of the response I had gotten back when I'd given that before made me think it spoke to at least one or two people in every audience that were going through something, that were struggling. So I started with that speech in person, and that one at the club level, and it won at area, and then between area and division, then the world melted down. It was kind of crazy. I had a son that got married right in about that time. They got married and flew to Mexico for their honeymoon. And they said they came back and they felt like it was a zombie apocalypse. Everyone was wearing masks. They flew into an urban center. There were no cars on the streets. You thought, what is happening? So Toastmasters was sending out emails saying, we may not continue the contest. We're trying to decide what we're going to do. Just hang tight, keep working on your speech. Different clubs were beginning to not meet in person. And then the message came out and said, we're going to go ahead and go forward, but it's going to be all virtual. It's going to be all in Zoom. Mm-hmm. So I started practicing in Zoom, and I started my speech right here, like our little Zoom box that we see right here. I started practicing, and I would watch the speech with the volume down, and it was boring. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm typically in an in-person speech, I'm not frenetic, but I'm moving all over the stage. I view it different points. I will start on one end of the stage, and then I'll do another point maybe at the front stage left, and move around to position characters. And I thought, I can't do that here. So I thought, and I'm sure this is not original to me. I read it somewhere around that time, but was saying, in every challenge, there are opportunities. I know where I read that was Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way. I would recommend, I read it every year again. It is Ryan Holiday is one of my favorite authors. He brings forward Stoic philosophy into a modern context. And he's also a beautiful writer, a brilliant historian. Ryan Holiday, Obstacle is the Way. If you don't remember anything else, please read that book. He has several good ones, but so I read Ryan Holiday's Obstacle is the Way, and it's from a quote by Marcus Aurelius, who was the emperor of Rome and also one of the big three Stoic philosophers, that says, and I'm paraphrasing, but when you are on a path and you come to an obstacle in the path, many turn back, many just avoid the path completely, but the obstacle is the path. You can make the obstacle the way. This idea that an obstacle in a path becomes the bridge to where you really are intended to go. And I found that concept mind-bending and beautiful. And enter then the change of the context. So I've got this rolling in the back of my head. The obstacle is the way. How could the obstacle be the way in this box? Okay. I can't run from side to side. I can't really position myself at very different points because I'm much more limited side to side. But it hit me. I am much less limited forward to back. And so I started thinking about, okay, what could I do over here? And then what could I do up here? And then when I was just playing with that, it also hit me. If you're sitting in a ballroom of 3,000 and I'm speaking here, you and I really can't have an intimate conversation if you're sitting 10 rows back, certainly halfway back or at the back of the room. I can only have an intimate conversation maybe with the front row, with someone on the front row. But here's a huge advantage that it just hit me. I thought, I can get right here and have a truly intimate conversation with everybody. Because even if I make a small nuance in the movement of my face from you can see every micro movement, or like in that blue speech, from me going, "Hey, Mom, what's going on?" to Maria died in surgery.
Mhm.
You can feel the micro movements in someone's change of face where that's impossible in person. So with the obstacle is the way rolling in the back of my head, that I started changing that speech to try to bring out the emotion. With that, I do have to say, because I get a lot of questions about this, how do you have to be an actor to do that? And the answer is no. It takes a lot of practice. But what I positioned behind the camera. So let me turn this way. I'll pick up my little Indiana coaster here. Say that's the camera. A lot of people were speaking to the camera. But if I'm really wanting to tell the story and create those micro movements in my face, I've got to be speaking through the camera to someone sitting here on the opposite side. And if I can mentally put someone I love, someone I have a close relationship with, and I'm telling that story to them, it's much more natural coming through the camera. And so in that blue speech, when I'm talking about my mother coming and telling me that my good friend had surprisingly died in surgery, I'm imagining telling that story to one of my daughters who is very tenderhearted. And I even right now, I'm thinking about, what her emotion would be, feeling empathy for me, and it brings out that emotion naturally. So that's just one aspect, or a couple of aspects, I guess it would be, that changed. I had to, and why they changed once we moved from in person to virtual.
I had competed previously, and I had made it to the district level. And for those of us in the Toastmasters realm or world, you know that when you make it to the district level, that's major. That's a lot of competitive speakers in Toastmasters. That's a dream to make it to the district level. And once I made it to the district level, I had convinced myself, that was in 2015, I had convinced myself that I was already there. And then I lost in 2015. And for a lot of us who are watching this, whether we want to admit it or not, when we compete and we continue to ascend and then we lose, it's a shattering blow to our ego. And many of us step back because we feel cheated, or we feel like it was unfair, and we just get discouraged and we fall back from the organization. And I did that. And I tried to compete again in 2016, and it was the same result, the same outcome. I lost again at the club level, actually. So when I heard at the district level in 2018 that I was going to move forward, I was like, oh my goodness. And then at the semifinals that was held in Chicago in 2018, it was all males. I was the only woman in my round, or in I don't know what to call it, in my cohort, in my group, and the competitors that were broken down. So at the semifinals in Chicago, there were 109 competitors, and it was broken down into like 9 or 10 groups, and all of us competed against each other. So I'm this little skinny girl, the youngest there. At the time, I was barely 30, and I have all these grandpas to my right and to my left. And there was even a man who came over, he approached me, and he bent down, and I'm like, yes, finally, they can see I'm nervous, I'm shaking, I got on the skirt, like, ah. He bends down and he says, I'm going to beat the pants off you, right? And in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I'm wearing a skirt, so good luck with that. But to just go up on that stage with confidence, and to go up there with full preparation, because I did my best, and I prepared, and I had given the speech, and I had gotten feedback, and I was comfortable with it, and I just went up on that stage, and I was just completely myself. And then to hear that I had won and advanced to the finals round, it was surreal. once I heard my name for first place, the world stopped, time stopped, and I had never gone that far before. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what's next, but let me bask in this moment. And I just called everybody. I was like, I won. And then reality hit, and it was like, okay, well, you have to have a whole entire new speech. So now what? So it was like very, very high. And then it was like very, very low. That's hard for me to say as far as when I first started competing, because I had someone, a very talented, knowledgeable, another guru of Toastmasters and speaking, Larry Sapansky. He gave me a lot of mentorship and a lot of guidance as far as how to use the stage, and as far as how to use vocal variety and how to use props and how to really give a world championship speech, because there is a formula. There is a formula. Luckily for me, I had people like him in my corner to prepare me, and I had people like Cheryl Warren and Kathy Kest, but I love you, Kathy Crosby too, but Kathy Kest and Rose Williams to help me and help guide me along the way. The advice that I would give is to, and it's very hard and it's very challenging, but don't think about winning. Don't make winning the ultimate goal, because that feeds your ego. And as a world champion, if you are strictly doing this for your ego, you are going to cheat so many people out of a genuine experience. You're going to cheat so many people out of what they're genuinely desiring from someone who they call a world champion. If you go to all these countries and you're only talking about yourself and how it benefited you and how sparkly and big this trophy is, you're not adding value to the lives of these hundreds of thousands of other Toastmasters who have a dream of really being a dynamic speaker and a dynamic leader. So if the trophy is your ultimate goal, don't compete. If the trophy is the only thing you're in it for, don't compete. But if you genuinely have a message that is going to add value to the lives of the people in your audience, if you have a message that is going to inform, entertain, inspire, motivate, persuade, move, go ahead and do it. But don't just do it to win. That's really the biggest piece of advice that I could give any person who wants to compete. Don't just do it to win. Do it to help your fellow Toastmasters.
Well, at the beginning of the Toastmaster journey, I didn't even know that there is a speech contest. And I was told by my club president at the time that since I'm really good with humor, I should try competing in the humorous contest. And I didn't know what I didn't know exactly like what it is, but he told me about it. I said, okay, I'll just give it a shot. And the first year I competed, I think it was 2010. And I wrote a humorous speech. I competed in the club. And when I got to the area level, I lost and I got second place. And I'm a bit of a sore loser, so I didn't really take it really well. And I remember I was in the hall, just sat there and with my trophy, my tiny little second place trophy. And the president came to me and he said, "You did an amazing job and I loved your speech." And I said, yeah. He said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Well, it's like second place. Look how tiny this thing is." And he said something to me that triggered me or like stayed with me. He said, "Look, if you're looking for a piece of glass for a trophy, I'll go now and I'll buy you the biggest one. Just tell me how big you want it and I'll just go and just buy it. You should aim for something more than that." Mm. And then he asked me, "Why do you speak? Like, what is your ultimate goal out of like speaking? You should have a target, because if you don't have a target, it will be easy for you to quit halfway through." And I said to him, I said, "Well, hopefully one day, I wanted to speak to an audience of 1,000 people. If I could speak to 1,000 people, for me, that would be my dream." He looked at me and he smiled and he said, "If this is really what you want, then one day, I don't know when, but one day, you'll compete in the World Championship Finals and you'll speak in front of thousands. And then he gave me a piece of paper and a pen, and he said, write your acceptance speech that you're going to say when you win the world championship. And I thought he was crazy. but then he said, look, once you write it, you'll believe it. And once you believe it, it will happen. And I did write an acceptance speech back in 2010. And in 2015, 5 years later, I spoke in front of 3,000 people. And when I won, they asked me to say a few words. And I stood at that podium and I said the exact acceptance speech that I wrote 5 years ago.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that's the kind of mentor or coach that everybody needs in their corner. Are you still in touch with him?
Yes. Of course. And I would also like to add, like, you don't have to stick to just one mentor. You see, everybody, when it comes to speaking, everybody has a strength and has a weakness. I found out that my strength is humor. Like, I can make jokes easily. Because I've done a lot of like stand-up comedy, so writing something funny or something humorous for me comes easily. But my weakness is writing itself. Like, I'm not really good with words. Like, I'm a horrible writer. And because of that, I seek people within my Toastmaster club or like within the area that I'm in. I seek people that when I watch them speak, I notice that they're using really powerful words and really just colorful words. And I said, okay, I need your help to mentor me in that area. I've never sought anybody to mentor me in humor. Yeah. I'm not trying to just brag, but I knew this is the area where I am strong. But I seek the mentorship in the areas where I think that I'm weak. And I want every speaker to also look at yourself and ask yourself, what is the one thing that I do very well as a speaker? And what is the area that I need to improve in? Some of you might be great in terms of being like physical on stage and body movements. It comes really like natural. Some of you might have a beautiful voice. When it's like, if you do like, you do like all the voice modulation, whatever, it comes to you like naturally. Some of you are great writers. Some of you are great with using your hands. So find out the thing that your strength. You don't have to seek advice in these areas because you got it. You're already talented in that. And find out what is the areas that is your weakness, and find those that you know who possesses that strength and let them be your coaches or your mentors. The other thing that I found that's really great in terms of the contest is you're putting yourself to the test against other Toastmasters like as well. You might become, you might start to get comfortable with the way that you're speaking within your club. But once you go to the, into the contest season, you get to be, you get to see how it is done on a higher, on a higher level. And yes, you might lose the first year, second year, third year, but every time you compete again, you know how to just push yourself to even higher and higher limits. But right after I won, they took me to another hall where the 3,000 people who watched me speak that day, they all lined up just to have a picture with me and have me sign and like have me, sign an autograph or whatever. And like I felt like $1 million, like I felt like, hey, and I started to think about the fame and all the stuff that comes with it. And sometimes when that happens, sometimes you forget the reason why you even started speaking in the first place. So for like an hour, I'm standing there and everybody's coming to me and I'm taking photos with people, signing autographs and enjoying the moment of fame. Until this lady came to me and I could see that she had tears in her eyes. And when she came to me, she grabbed my hand and she said, son, I don't want a photo. I don't want an autograph. I stood in this line for an hour just to tell you this. What you said up there will make me a better person. I'll be a better person just because of something that you said. I just wanted to come here and say, thank you. Wow. And I know what I'm about to say might sound a little bit cliche or like a little bit hard to believe, but right at that moment, it all didn't matter. The money and the fame and the title and all of it. Because she reminded me, why am I speaking in the first place? You know, for us as speakers, the easiest thing to do for you is to just open your mouth and say words. But you don't know who's watching and listening on the other side. And you might be the reason that somebody is living a better life or somebody is living a horrible life just because of something that you said. If you remember at the beginning of this video, I told you the story of a teacher who just said one line. He said, "There's no hope out of you." And it wrecked me for 12 years. And also a student who said, stand in front of the audience and like speak, and he saved my life. All they had to do is just open their mouth and speak. The words are so easy for us to say, but we might not even know how the impact that it will have on the people in front of us. I always tell people the power of words speech that I gave and I won the championship with. It's not just a speech that I just did just to win a title. It's truly what I truly believe in. I really think that we can fix every problem in this world if we just said the right things.
Yes.
Ooh, that was so good. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you received something and that you were entertained and that you learned something and that you're feeling inspired by those phenomenal speakers. You can always go take a look at their interviews. Don't hesitate. I mean, I have the interviews of every single one of them has been linked in the description below and also throughout the video. Stay tuned for more. And don't forget to comment. Let us know what you think, what you like the most, what resonated with you the most, what tip you think will change your life forever. Let us know. And can't wait to see you in the next video. Take care of yourself. Bye.